Historically, my four-seam fastball has not been a very good pitch. The shape of it specifically was subpar. I was right in that dead zone range of 14 to 15 vertical break and 8 to 10 horizontal break. So I decided to tinker with my grip a little bit and see what kind of movement I could get without changing my arm slot. So I want to walk through a couple things that I've done personally to increase the vertical break from that 14-15 range to now being consistently 17 or higher. And the first thing I want to tell you to do, if you are a guy that cuts the ball especially, is you want to get the horseshoe of the ball on the outside part of your hand. So this part right here, you want it on the outside as opposed to the inside. When it's on the inside, the tendency is to cut this pitch because your index finger has a hard time getting on top of the seam because of the way the lace is coming down here. So it becomes a middle finger dominant pitch, which is going to lead to a little bit more cut. So that's step one. Try to flip over to the other side so the horseshoe is on the outside part of the ball. The next thing you want to do is you want to make sure that your fingertips are directly on these seams. If I climb too far onto the leather, I don't really have anything that I can rip on or pull against to create that good true backspin on the pitch. So when I'm holding this, I feel like my fingertips are right on these seams and it feels like they're like gripping them and hugging them. So if it wasn't actually on the ball, it feels like my fingers are doing this on those seams. And that just allows me to feel something to rip through to create that backspin. The next thing you want to do is you want to make sure that your fingers aren't too far apart. So sometimes guys, especially younger players, they'll tend to get their grip a little bit too wide like this. And more than anything, this is just going to kill a little bit of velocity and you're not going to be able to get as aggressive of backspin. Or sorry, you can still get the backspin, but you just potentially are sacrificing a little bit of velocity with those fingers being too far apart. They don't necessarily need to be all the way together like this, but definitely having them semi-close is going to allow you to almost think of these as one unit instead of two separate fingers. You almost want to feel like they're one finger that you can just rip through that baseball with. So for me, being just slightly apart like this is what works for me. The next thing that you want to make sure is you want to actually make sure that you're directly on the ball and that you're not turning the ball at all. I find this a lot actually with guys, especially when I look at it on video. They think that their fingers are directly straight on this ball, and then you look at the video and they're slightly turned like this, which is going to lead to you cutting the ball a little bit more. So really make sure that you are straight on that ball. And a good way to check for this is just to look at it from the side view like this. This circle right here should be pretty even. That should look like a half circle from your fingers going along the seams. If it starts to turn, you'll notice that it's not as even there. So you just want to make sure that you are directly on that ball, because if you're not, if you're slightly crooked, doesn't matter how true you pull through those seams, it's going to have a little bit of cut to it, or the opposite, and it's going to cause it to run a little bit more. The next thing is thumb position. For me, I just like to have it underneath like this. Some guys like to tuck the thumb, other guys like to have it a little bit higher up. Find what's comfortable for you and also find what works for you to at least rip through those seams, because the thumb position can play a factor in that. And you want to make sure that you're not kicking the axis, you're not changing something because of that thumb position. And then lastly, fairly loose grip is good, but like I said, because I'm hugging those seams, I feel like I'm really gripping them. I do have a little bit more pressure personally on my fingertips to really feel like I'm ripping through those seams. But generally speaking, you want your hand to be loose so you can really rip through the ball.